This was very rich. We also have a very rich harvest from the chat and from the chat at Curator. Lisette, in the meantime, you have looked at different contributions there, and you picked out a few that you want to bring into the debate, right? Please go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you, Cor. So in the Curator, there were a number of questions already posed directly to Nadine and Anil, and I've selected two. To start with Nadine about IFAD. Ones Caruo, I hope I pronounced the name right, poses the question, IFAD has been actively tracking financial flows to food systems. Has the application of the 3FS tool led to repurposing public spending towards building resilient, inclusive and competitive food systems? And if yes, do you have an example? Or if you see, and that's a bit my addition, if it's maybe not there yet and hasn't happened yet, do you see any movement in that direction, and will it be likely to lead to repurposing subsidies, and where and how?
Yes, my microphone is open. Lisa, then responding to the question, the 3FS tool is brand new. We have supported 3 governments in using it, and they wanted to pilot it to basically have what we call a mapping of their financing. Basically, what is it financing? Where is it going? And is it aligned to their priorities? And 3 governments did that, which allowed us to refine the way to do it. And now we have basically 10 governments requesting to do this. So it's really in the process of applying it, and we're also pushing on using it, and what do you use it for? How do you find this information being useful? If I look, I wouldn't go to the level of repurposing in terms of subsidies, but repurposing can be from a sector from one sector to another one as well. And I would give, for example, Niger. The government of Niger was one of the first governments to pilot the 3FS. And many of you know that Niger is in the Sahel region. And so in the food system strategy, one of the main challenges is basically to address desertification, natural resource management, land degradation, and all these issues. They say this is our first priority in our food system strategy. And when they looked at the user 3FS to look at how they were allocating public resources to food systems, their own national budget and development partners, they realized that I think less than 7% of the food system budget, national resources, were going to environment and natural resources, and less than 3% of what development partners were given. And so here the minister told us we need to have a discussion on the national budget, because we say that if we don't address this question of land degradation, desertification, we cannot basically improve our food system. But this is one of the least financed area of a food system plan. So they say, so this requires arbitrage in our national budget. So these are the kind of things that are coming up from this system.
Thank you, Nadine. That's very insightful. I think that how the 3FS tool can lead to insight for governments that they have to further discover and research where to put their means towards transformation in the food system. That's very promising. We hope we can follow all the developments that come from 3FS. Very interesting for this group, I think. Then I have one more question that came from Curator, and I'll pose that question to Anil, if you allow me. Phyllis Ado in Curator poses the question: when working with multiple stakeholders, like farmer organizations, private finance and government, how do you manage trade-offs between them? For example, she says here, quick income gain versus long-term soil health, or larger agribusiness versus smallholder equity. Have you experienced any trade-offs? Can you give an example? And how did you deal with that trade-off?
Well, tough question. Because whenever we talk about trade-off, it is always short-term and long-term. It is about here and now and later. And if you take a smallholder farmer, the choices are pretty difficult to make. Food on the table today for the family, vis-a-vis saving the soil for the next generation, right? Having said that, what I have experienced in my journey of understanding the smallholder farmer households is the 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 journey between an intervention to execution has to be a coordinated one where you have to align the incentives. If the incentives are aligned for today as well as for long term, there is always a positive disposition to the intervention. Right? Let me just take three, or actually one example of how the incentives can be aligned from a better quality perspective, and I would take milk as a value chain or dairy as a value chain. Okay, in the context of Indian farmers, they usually have two or three milch animals with them, and the way they supply the milk to the local aggregator, who is the intermediary who collects 5 to 10 liters of milk per family, convert them into a 40-liter cans, and then connects them to the market, to the closest chilling center, right? The way they would do that is either they take the milk where there is no quality testing, or they let the aggregator come and milk the cows themselves so that they have quality at the source. Or the last but not the least is where they set up a milkometer to basically test the fat and SNF. What we understand from the household is when you have a verifiable source to establish quality, everybody is aligned to maintaining that quality. In the absence of it, it's always how do I get better of the other person and make most of the lack of transparency in the system. What I would wish is if this quality dimension can come in grains, can come in other agri value chains, so that there is a positive incentive for the smallholder farmer to focus on quality versus quantity. Similarly, on the minimum residues or permissible residues in the post-harvest grains, more often than not, the export potential of our country doesn't get I would say harnessed, because there is significant lack of understanding of how to maintain the quality that is required for markets like yourselves. So how do we bring in or align the incentive that when you produce a better quality output, there are better paying customers who are there out in the market to value what you have produced. In the absence of it, why should I do it is the question. So it goes back to how do you align the incentives? You align the incentives for a better behavior. Having said that, the last comment that I would make is this transition cannot happen without hand-holding, because one season failure can push the smallholder family back into poverty. So they cannot afford to fall back in poverty by losing one of their experimental engagements. So are there safety nets through public finance or guarantee structures or blended finance structures or transitory support financing instruments, where if I get into regenerative farming to save my soil by not using chemicals indiscriminately, if in the transition my economic condition becomes worse than what I was with my current behavior, is there someone to handhold me, someone to provide the safety net? If we start looking at from that dimension that there is an intention, but there is a possibility of the vulnerability that they cannot, then that becomes a difficulty. So it's not about whether they care about the soil or not. They know it. And I'm told some of the farmers actually grow separately for their family consumption and grow separately for the market consumption. So they know that what they are doing is not right. But can they afford to do what is right and compromise on the food on the table for the family? That's a tough ask.
Thank you very much. It's a very insightful answer, I think, and very important. I think that the business case of doing sustainable business needs to be clear and needs to be there, and there needs to be agreement sort of on the incentives in whatever form. and stimulation if the business case is maybe not yet clear. It should become clear, otherwise it's not viable in the long run. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Cor, back to you because I see time is pressing a little bit.
Thank you, Lisette. I think we can have the last one or two questions selected from the chat. Mariel, you looked at that. Can you bring in the first one?
Yeah, I wanted to bring in one first question, which is important. I read it out. We know, it is from Phyllis Ado, we know that transition takes time, yet funders often expect visible outflows from their investments within a relatively short period. From your experience, how do you navigate this tension and strike a balance between long-term transition and short-term results? Maybe first to Anil and then to Nadine. Can you answer this question? I think it's a very important question when we talk about food systems transformation.
Absolutely. I completely agree with the conundrum, the dilemma that exists between the here and now to the long term and the pressures that the investors have. And thanks to this question, we face it as Samunati at regular intervals when we engage with the market players, right? What has worked in our context is first and foremost selection of the investors. Who do you want to be on the bus as your fellow traveler, and do they resonate with what you are building? So in the context of Samunati, lending to agriculture as a non-bank finance company as the only sector did not exist when I started this journey in 2014. But fortunately for me, my first investor resonated with that idea for the sole reason that they had gone and seen what agriculture is on the field. From then onwards, the new investors who have come, we make it a point at regular intervals to take them to the field, to make them interact with the clients, to make them interact with the businesses that we are funding, and have a good expectation of the dynamics of both the cost and risk, the return and reward, and make them fellow travelers, so to say. Having said that, not all do that. People don't have time to invest in field visits. So the cohort comes down to a very small group.
Nadine, on this same question. Thank you, Anil. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And fortunately, we now have different type of investors. And for example, taking the case of impact investors, and this is, for example, type of investors IFAD is working with as a UN organization which is working on long-term transformation. You now have impact investors or impact funds where basically the motivation they have is in making profit but investing in social good. And I think in balancing the very legitimate short-term profit needs of small and medium enterprise, you also have those impact investors which can afford to invest in more longer-term transformative outcomes and different kind of outcome. So what we see today is the challenge of the balance between the two. And I think, of course, there's still not enough in terms of impact investment and long-term investment. And we see a strong tension between short-term benefits and long-term ones. But this is something that over time, I mean, the UN Secretary General is always saying we don't have the luxury to choose between one or the other. I mean, the private companies needs to make profit today to be sustainable for tomorrow. But at the same time, we cannot afford not to look at the long-term goals that we are trying to achieve. So it's not one or the other.
It's a combination. Maybe related to this, only one more question to you, Nadine. There was a question from the audience that asks what kind of financial models you have to stimulate this food systems transformation. Do you want to say, as IFAD, which kind of financial models you support? Do you want to say anything about that?
It will be a very long answer because there's not like one model fits all. It really depends, and Daniel is here on the country context, on the economies, on the kind of private sector you have. I mean, what you would finance, for example, in the Philippines is not what you would finance in the Gambia or what you would finance in China. So I think you have very different financing models. One lesson we have learned is that the financial model must be fitted to the country context and to the country capacity. It is the right mix of financial instrument fitted to the country specific situation. And as I was mentioning before, you have countries which are more advanced, more robust financially, and have the capacity to rely more on market-based resource or less concessional funding. And you have countries which are completely dependent on grants, on the very highly concessional resources. And you have others which are like the global north, who are completely leading on their financial model. So what we say is that it's basically about each government working with its private sector to assemble the right mix of financial instruments between the national budget, the capital market, the development finance, and basically the completely private sector. It is really fitted to each country situation.
Okay, thank you. But I think that's already explains enough. I think, Cor, we have to go back to you.
Thank you, Mariel. Thanks for scrutinizing the chat. Of course, it's difficult to do merit to all the good comments that are circulating on the chat. I hope that the discussion amongst you as participants will continue. Maybe before giving the floor to Lisette, one question to Anil and Nadine. These course participants that are in the room and their colleagues, they will be busy the next 4 or 5 weeks with this course about food systems finance and all these aspects that we have touched upon. Is there one piece of good advice that you want to give them? Anil.
I would say be at it, because one statement that it hit me when the COVID was around the corner is crisis, no crisis, food on the table is a necessity. So this food systems are a necessity come what may. They are not an option, so to say. So the fact that so many people are interested in a course like this is very encouraging, that people have started looking at this topic not from a here and now perspective, but from a strategic perspective. So we all need to be together and learn together. So be at it would be my request.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Anil. Nadine, your piece of advice.
My piece of advice, I would keep it very simple, is that I think if all of them at the end of the course can come up with what actually is food system financing, what are we talking about? What does it mean to achieve it? I think let them be attentive to that, and the course might not give them the full answer, because if you ask the question to people, what is food systems? You get very different answers. I think when you will ask people what is food system financing, you will get very different answers. And I think at the end of the day is to come up with one. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It was really great to have you here, Nadine and Anil, and share all your expertise and your insights with us. Thanks a very lot for that, and congratulations with your inputs. Lisette, back to you.
Thank you, Cor, and also from my side, a very big thank you to Anil and Nadine for sharing your insights and giving your feedback on the Mentimeter and the opinion of all the participants. And Cor, thank you for facilitating as well. And of course, on the background, also Bram for all the techniques and Mariel for scrutinizing the chat. But last and certainly not least, thank you to all of you, the participants and the members of this first cohort of the Food Systems Finance e-course. We're very happy to have launched this e-course for the first time this year. It definitely is a journey and it is a start. And I think that is also a bit in line in what Nadine just said. It's a start in becoming conscious of what food systems are and jointly also embarking on this adventure on what food systems can mean for the financial sector and how the financial sector can co-drive change in food systems. So we are very happy that you're with us on this journey. Please exchange on the Curator platform as much as possible. Log into the webinar in the week of Module C, where there will be another opportunity to live share opinions and hear from experts. And happy to have you on board.
So, having thanked the speakers and the organizers and the audience, the only thing I want to say to the participants in the e-course, enjoy the ride, right? Don't be afraid to have a bit of adventure. It's a journey. It's not a topic from the shelf. It's a topic we're developing amongst each other. So enjoy the ride, contribute to it, and be inspired. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cor. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Hi. Hi everyone.